Found a camera in my room. So, I've never posted this to subreddit, so please forgive me for any formatting errors or whatever. Just a bit of context. I went to a small liberal arts college that had campus houses in addition to dorms. I was an RA, resident assistant, for a grouping of houses. I was in charge of a large house that had a lot of people. This happened in February 2017. So in my junior year of college, I found a camera in my room. I just returned home from dance rehearsal. So I took a shower, changed, and fixed a poster and watched some vines. As I was getting ready for bed, I picked out a hair bow I wanted to wear the next day. Well, amongst the hair bows, I spot a small black box. My first thought is that it's one of those funky little ant traps, and the maintenance guy left it there. I picked it up and it had a bit of tape on it. I peeled back the tape to reveal a red light. Well, fuck. I flip it over and find some words. I don't remember exactly what it said, but it had the make and model of the camera. At that moment, I realize what it is and my heart drops. What the fuck? I run down the hall to my two good friends' rooms and show them. I find there was an SD card left on the camera. We want to look on it, but none of our laptops have an SD card reader. No biggie. My friend works the library and says she'll rent a reader from them. Next day I come home from classes and take a peek at what my friends have found. Footage of me and several other girls in assorted buildings. There was no compromising footage of me, for which I'm very thankful, but there was footage of some girls peeing, brushing their teeth, all sorts of stuff. I didn't see all the footage, so I don't know exactly what else was there. Fuck. Well, they showed me the footage on the person hiding the camera. Yes, you read that right. The person who hid the camera recorded themselves doing it, and I recognized them. They were another RA on the same staff team as me. At this point, I'm freaking the fuck out. I call our boss, who's doing the interviews for next year's RAs, and go, dude, I have to talk to you right now. I tell him the situation, and he seems calm. Says he'll take care of it, but he needs me to come to his office later that night. I say okay. The next part of the day was excruciating. I had to go to a dinner meeting for a campus organization I was president of. I was worried the person might come back and take their camera while I was gone, so I grabbed it and took it with me. My freshman year roommate was there with me, and on the drive home, she asked me what was wrong. I told her and showed her the camera. As we were sitting in the parking lot, someone is walking towards my building. Who should it be but the fucker who hid a camera in my room? At this point, I'm having a full panic attack. My friend says she'll cover for me, so watch the house while I get the fuck out of there, so I just book it away from there. I hid in another building until she let me know he was gone and away. At this point, I meet with my boss. I tell him what happened. He looks at the footage with his boss. I answer questions for campus security, then I answer questions for the city police. My boss and I go back to my house to make sure there were no other cameras. They take the guy in question and put him in a detaining center of sorts or something like that. I don't know. I don't sleep well that night. The next morning, I have no update of what's going on. I'm looking over my shoulder every 5 seconds, and I am absolutely terrified that he's loose and going to come after me. I don't even know the situation. Then I get a call. He's not allowed out of the room. I have to answer more questions for another police officer. They tell me what they learned from him. He began his voyeuristic shenanigans by hiding the camera in one of his fraternity brothers' rooms and managed to film him having sex. At this point, he went with his camera to the women's bathroom and bedrooms of his female residences. I don't remember how many, but there were at least 7 people filmed. They arrested him, and he was in jail for 3 days, then released to get his stuff and go to his hometown until they had the school trial. During this time, the school has to tell our staff team that he will no longer be there for the rest of the year. They refused to tell the team what happened, or let me tell anyone. They said it was so he could leave with dignity, as if he deserved it. Months go by. After many meetings with assorted people, they have his trial. He is expelled. Of course he would be, like Jesus Christ. A year later, he has his legal trial with the state the school I attended is in. I was never informed of the results. I still need to call the police station. This was a few months ago. However, I did receive a restraining order in the mail. Somewhere during this mess, I figure out he had got in my house and how he hid the camera. He got into my house because he had been granted key card access. I live in a weird large house which has key cards and not keys. He was granted this access because all my residents needed help getting her stuff out of the storage, but he had accidentally mailed her keys and her key card back home. Apparently, Security thought the best way to handle this was to give him keycard access to our house. He knew exactly when I would not be in the house, because the night it was hidden, we had a staff meeting, and I told our group chat that I would be leaving a few minutes early to pick up snacks. He knew where I was going, and that I would not be home. It sickens me to think that before he hit that camera, we were laughing in rehearsal together. We were in a large music ensemble together, and after he did it, we were joking around at our staff meeting, just acting totally normal, as if he didn't just violate my privacy. So, creepy dude who hid a camera in my room, let's not meet ever again. Hidden knife. I hope this is okay here. It was a really creepy thing to me, and it's something I've had a hard time getting over. About a decade ago, I was a sophomore in high school, and we had a big 9 to 10 day long trip to Europe. We could take it if we took foreign language. I signed up the year before and worked to pay for it myself, and it was a really big deal to me because I spent a whole summer paying for it, etc. And my family is low class, and no one has ever left the country, etc. Because in New Hampshire, schools aren't that big, we had to combine the kids from 3 schools for the trip. There was a girl named Maria from a different town. She was kind of the opposite of me, loud, confident, comfortable in her sexuality, even though she was somewhat chubby, etc. At the time, I was kind of discovering my own sexuality and gender identity, and really awkward. Somehow I became friends with her by default. We were sitting next to each other on the bus to the airport, then on the plane. We kind of ended up spending a lot of time together by coincidence, and ended up chatting and kind of becoming temporary BFFs. I was basically like, hey, someone likes me, because in my school I was bullied a lot. So I started to notice some things about her, which were off. She would randomly talk about super personal things. Things like her mom being a druggie and her being molested. She said she was in love with one of the teachers, and she was sure he really cared about her because he was really friendly to her. Now, the first half of the trip was in Spain. We were in Madrid, but spent a day in Toledo, at the place where they made really cool swords. Some of us brought stuff, but she made a point of saying she didn't want to waste her money. On the train to France, she showed me the first porn I ever saw. A D talked about how her 70-year-old dad was dying of AIDS and all kinds of other stuff. She said she had been a prostitute when she was 12 or 13. She talked about how really she liked me so much. France is where everything got really fucked up. To this point, I know she sounds just talkative, but she was everywhere I went. She happened to be seated next to me everywhere. She showed up at the shop I was in, and we had free time to wander. I'd find her walking into the bathroom right after me. We checked into our French hotel, and, unlike the Spanish one, we couldn't be all on the same floor. Most of the kids were on the 4th floor, and some were on the 5th. Maria was assigned as my hotel partner, and we were the only kids on the 3rd. There wasn't even one of the chaperones on that floor. That evening was free, and we spent it in our hotel room just hanging out. We were all tired from not really sleeping on the train the night before. Maria got into more weird stuff about how the teacher loved her and weird stuff about being gangbanged. She got into my bed and decided to lay with me and just talk. I have crazy social anxiety and felt really awkward, but she was also really my type, and I kind of wanted to fuck her, so I just kind of let her talk at me about all this stuff, and she starts to go on about how I'm the only person who has ever really listened to her and how great I was. I fell asleep holding her. In the morning, I woke up, and she was just looking at me, like really looking at me, like I was a puzzle she was trying to figure out. I can't explain it. It was really weird. She was creeping me out. Finally, she decided whatever issue was going on in her head. She asked me to get a cup of coffee from the floor that had the hotel breakfast. I did it and felt pretty good. I was thinking maybe I could get the nerve to kiss her or something that day. I got in the elevator to go to our floor, and some other kids from my group were in there with me. It stopped on 3. I went to get out, and this guy from my trip stopped me from leaving my elevator. He literally bear hugged me and patted my hair like a mom and pushed me back and hit the button to go to a different floor. I was freaking out. I asked if something happened to my roommate because all I saw were some people hunched over the doorway of my open hotel room door and blood. I honestly have a hard time remembering those minutes because I'm the kind of person who watches forensic files and shit and always goes to the worst. So I'm like, somehow, in 10 minutes, I'm getting her coffee, something awful happened to my roommate. I ended up getting questioned by the police, being 15, and not speaking French. It was a bit stressful. At first, my roommate claimed that all night there were loud bangs and stuff in the hall, and when I went to get her coffee, I didn't close the door completely, and some foreign guys came in, went through her stuff, and attacked her. She had a big knife stuck in her leg, in her thigh. That's where the blood came from, because of what happened. I'd be questioned in case she was covering me for attacking her or something like that. The truth is much crazier. The knife that was in her leg she claimed to have never seen. The thing was, it was from the same sword place we went to in Toledo, in a completely different country. Doesn't make sense that someone would follow from Spain to France to stab a 16-year-old? After a day of questions and crying, the teacher brought me to Maria in the hospital. Before I went in, he asked me, looking straight into my eyes, did she ever say anything to you to suggest she would hurt herself? She had gone on and on about being a cutter, etc., and I just told him everything. I went into the room and she was crying and so happy to see me. She insisted the whole time that her story was true. The teacher felt awkward from her crying, and he asked if I wanted to talk to her alone. He left the room. Maria held me really close, crying. She said I was the nicest person she has ever met, and she said she decided it would be easier to stab herself. I wish I could share the intonation of the sentence. When she said it herself, it was clear her original intention was to stab someone else, that someone else being the sleeping person in her hotel room. She had planned this from early in the trip. In Spain or possibly before the trip, I don't really know. She liked me because I listened to her, and she decided to just stab herself? She said it like she was doing me a favor, or giving me a gift. She gave me her email address and told me to message her when I got back to the USA. She was getting what she wanted, and that plan for the teacher she liked had to fly home with her that night, as soon as the hospital let her go. So, crazy hotel room stabber. Let's never fucking meet again. Someone repeatedly breaks into my room and leaves gifts. This happened to a close friend and housemate of mine whilst at university. I'll call her Laura for the purposes of the story. We were in your second year of university, and while it's typical to move out of halls and into a house during second year for financial reasons, we both decided to apply to stay in our halls of residence again. We attended the University of York in the UK, and chose the college just behind the library, due to the ensuite bathrooms and the close location to Heslington West. The halls were 3 floors high, with 10 people living on each floor, and everyone seemed pretty nice. Everyone had a car key, which you had to use to access the main building, and again to access your floor. And the only other way to access the building was if you rang the buzzer and someone physically came and opened the door. If you lost your key card, you had to report it to the porter, and it would instantly be cancelled, so it no longer worked, and you would be issued a new one. Now, I've described our living situation. I'll proceed with the story. Term started off normally enough. My friend and I both on the same course, genetics, and we attended our lectures, did society stuff, went to the library, and etc. We were a fan of midnight library trips, and one day we came back from the library around 2 a.m. We buzzed ourselves in, went in the lift to the second floor, and headed to our respective rooms to sleep. I was brushing my teeth maybe 5 minutes later, and there was a knock on my door. I answered it, and Laura came in with a confused expression and asked me to come to her room with her. I followed her, and she went over to her desk and picked up an origami swan. She swore she hadn't made it, and that it hadn't been there before a library trip. She asked me if I put it there at any point, but I'd never seen it before. While we used cards to buzz ourselves in through the door system, we unlocked our personal rooms with a key. I asked her if she'd locked her room before going out, and she insisted that she had. I told her that she must have forgotten and left it unlocked accidentally, and that it would be just one of our housemates prattling around. It's not uncommon for people to prank each other at university. During my first year, a housemate left his room unlocked, so we went and wrapped all the stuff in tinfoil and cling film. Laura was still looking a bit worried, however, but I told her not to worry, and she agreed that a paper swan was innocent enough, so she let it go, and we both went to bed. Around a week and a half passed, and we were both busy with university, so we pretty much forgot about the weird origami swan incident. In this time, Laura had asked all of her housemates about it, but none of them owned up to it, so we decided that it was definitely a housemate messing around, but not wanting to admit it was them. One day, we had a gap between our morning lectures and a library session in the afternoon, so we came home to make some lunch. I was making a sandwich in the kitchen, chatting with a couple of our housemates, and Laura came in. She was carrying another origami swan and a ribbon. She said the ribbon had been around her door handle, and that the swan had been on her desk again. This time, I knew she locked her door as we headed out for a 9 a.m. lecture together that morning, and I'd seen her do it. I was a bit confused, but I still insisted that it had to be one of our housemates messing around, because no one else could get in that corridor due to the door card system. Laura agreed with me, but was concerned because she knew she had lost her key whilst drunk during Freshers Week before. I hadn't know this, but apparently, a few days into term, we'd been out on a night, and it was a club, and the next morning Laura hadn't been able to find her key. She said she figured she must have lost it in the club somewhere, and had immediately gone to the porters and paid the fine to collect the new key. They told her just to hand the missing one in if they ever turned up. So now, Laura was thinking that maybe one of our housemates had the key, and realized it unlocks Laura's room, and was putting stuff in there as a practical joke. Laura, however, didn't see the funny side of someone going into her room, and thought it was a bit too weird and specific to be a practical joke. She decided to give everyone the benefit of the doubts, and took a picture of the swan and posted it on Facebook in our group chat saying, "Nice swan, lol, thanks guys. I'd appreciate it if you stopped going in my room now though." But they didn't stop going into her room. Over the next few weeks, whoever kept entering her room did so more frequently. They'd still leave the same weird-ass swans, but other things started happening too. For example, Laura would leave her laptop in a certain place on her desk, and when she came back, it would be on her pillow, and the clothes in her wardrobe would be rearranged, and books would be left out that she hadn't been reading. Again, it was nothing particularly sinister, but it was really freaking Laura out now, and she was beginning to doubt herself. She would often say that maybe she really had left her laptop on her pillow, and that she was just worrying because of the swan thing. It got to the point where she had me to look at her room before we leave for lectures, and had me watch her physically lock the door. But Laura wasn't losing it. Things really were moving around her room while she was gone, and someone was definitely going in there. This time, I posted a massive rant about it on the Facebook chat. All of her roommates absolutely swore it wasn't them, and that they keep an eye out, and honestly, none of them gave a particularly creepy vibe, and they all seemed fairly genuine about it. However, we knew it either had to be one of our housemates or a friend or partner that was letting into the buildings, as there was no way at all of entering without one of those active card keys, you know? This went on for a few more weeks, and eventually I urged her to tell campus security of what's been going on, and the weird swan leaving laptop person didn't let up. There were no security cameras inside of the building, but they said they would keep a close eye, and that they would increase the car patrols around the area of her college. Laura thanked them, but she wasn't convinced this would be much help, as she was convinced it was someone inside the house. She also informed the college provost, the guy who oversees things like student welfare and disciplinaries, and individually, all 30 people in that block were called to talk to him to see if anyone knew anything. Nothing ever came of it. But Laura was glad that the university were taking the situation seriously now. Now is when things started to get really friggin' creepy. The person was still moving things around her room and was leaving the occasional creepy swan, but now they started leaving notes. It was short notes on her pillow like, "You are pretty," but soon turned into full-blown letters, detailing how this person had been watching Laura since the beginning of the term, how much they liked her, and how they knew that she liked them too, because she always accepted their gifts. Naturally, Laura was seriously distressed by this point. She even considered moving out and staying somewhere else, but she ended up going to Open Doors, because she had severe anxiety and paranoia. It got to the point where she rarely left her room, and the only person she would allow to enter was me. She stopped going to lectures and to lacrosse society, which she loved, because she said she felt like she could feel eyes on her all the time, and was genuinely terrified someone might follow her and do something. If she had to go anywhere alone for any reason, she called me to come and meet her. She spent a lot of her time crying, and she was even struggling to complete essays and keep up with university stuff. I told her to keep all the letters, but she didn't want them in her room, so I looked after them and gave them to the provost, who ended up getting the police involved. Again, the police questioned us all, and nothing came of it. Finally, the university offered to change her door and have a new lock fitted. So, she had her new lock fitted, but the letters didn't stop. Instead, they just ended up getting pushed under the door when she was out. They became more and more graphic and sexual in nature, with them stating in great detail exactly what their life together would be like and what they do in the bedroom. We were well into second term by this point, and Laura was really struggling to cope. She deleted all of her social media accounts, and she failed on a couple of assignments due to the stress, but Laura was desperate not to quit, as she wanted to do well at her degree, and didn't want to let anyone down. We were still no closer to knowing who it was, however, and the only comforting thing was the fact that this person couldn't use the missing key to access her room anymore. Anyways, the letters continued, and finally a letter came asking her to meet up. The person asked Laura to meet up at 11 p.m. near Central Hall. In general, your campus is pretty well lit and pretty safe due to the security patrols, with very few incidences taking place. Central Hall, however, was one area of campus which really wasn't well lit, and in fact pretty dark. What's more, the entrance of Central Hall doesn't have any security cameras, so basically this person had asked to meet Laura in a dark area of campus with no security. Obviously, Laura didn't attend the 11 p.m. date, but instead reported it to campus security. Security checked the area out, but no one ever turned up after that. She received a letter asking her to meet up most days, and by this point, Laura was at breaking point. She phoned her mom and admitted what's been going on for the past few months. Her mom, who lived like an hour away by car, insisted that she was driving up the next day to talk to the college provost about the situation, and told Laura that under no circumstances she would be staying in those halls. Eventually, Laura agreed to take a medical leave of absence due to come back the following academic year. As September drew near, she made the decision to not come back. Through text, she told me nothing weird at all had happened since she'd gone back home, but that she felt too afraid to come back to York, and that she was still experiencing bad anxiety whenever she left the house. I've seen Laura since, and though she's doing okay now, the whole situation will be with her for life. After the whole situation with Laura, no one else was in our flat was ever targeted, and nothing odd happened, and I pretty much avoided all of her housemates, knowing that one of them, or someone close to them, had to be responsible for stalking Laura and causing the deterioration of her mental health. We still genuinely have no idea who was responsible for any of it, and I guess now we'll never know. So, creepy person out there, stay the hell away from Laura, and please God, let's never ever meet again, even though we probably already have.